Whose orders? The chief's up at Bag End. Chief, Chief, do you mean Mr. Lotho? Said Frodo. I suppose so, Mr. Baggins, but we have to say just the chief nowadays. Do you indeed? Said Frodo. Well, I am glad he has dropped the Baggins at any rate. But it is evidently high time that the family dealt with him and put him in his place. A hush fell on the hobbits beyond the gate. It won't do no good talking that way, said one. He'll get to hear of it. And if he makes so much noise, you'll wake the chief's big man. We shall wake him up in a way that will surprise him, said Merry. If you mean that your precious chief has been hiring ruffians out of the wild, then we've not come back too soon. He sprang from his pony, and seeing the notice in the light of the lanterns, he tore it down and threw it over the gate. The hobbits backed away and made no move to open it. Come on, Pippin, said Merry. Two is enough. Merry and Pippin climbed the gate, and the hobbits fled. Another horn sounded. Out of the bigger house on the right, a large, heavy figure appeared against a light in the doorway. What's all this? He snarled as he came forward. Gate breaking? You clear out, or I'll break your filthy little necks. Then he stopped, for he had caught the gleam of swords. Bill Ferny, said Merry, if you don't open that gate in 10 seconds, you'll regret it. I shall set steel to you if you don't obey. And when you have opened the gates, you will go through them and never return. You are a ruffian and a highway robber. Bill Ferny flinched and shuffled to the gate and unlocked it. Give me the key, said Merry. But the ruffian flung it at his head and then darted out into the darkness. As he passed the ponies, one of them let fly with his heels and just caught him as he ran. He went off with a yelp into the night and was never heard of again. Neat work, Bill, said Sam, meaning the pony. So much for your big man, said Merry. We'll see the chief later. In the meantime, we want a lodging for the night. And as you seem to have pulled down the bridge in and built this dismal place instead, you'll have to put us up. I am sorry, Mr. Merry, said Hob, but it isn't allowed. What isn't allowed? Taking in folk offhand like, and eating extra food, and all that, said Hob. What's the matter with the place? Said Merry. Has it been a bad year or what? I thought it had been a fine summer and harvest. Well, no, the year's been good enough, said Hob. We grows a lot of food, but we don't rightly know what becomes of it. It's all these gatherers and sharers, I reckon, going round counting and measuring and taking off to storage. They do more gathering than sharing, and we never see most of the stuff again. Oh, come, said Pippin, yawning. This is all too tiresome for me tonight. We got food in our bags. Just give us a room to lie down in. It'll be better than many places I have seen. The hobbits at the gate still seemed ill at ease. Evidently some rule or other was being broken. But there was no gainsaying four such masterful travelers, all armed, and two of them uncommonly large and strong-looking. Frodo ordered the gates to be locked again. There was some sense at any rate in keeping a guard, while ruffians were still about. Then the four companions went into the hobbit guardhouse and made themselves as comfortable as they could. It was a bare and ugly place, with a mean little grate that would not allow a good fire. In the upper rooms were little rows of hard beds, and on every wall there was a notice and a list of rules. Pippin tore them down. There was no beer and very little food, but with what the travelers brought and shared out, they all made a fair meal. And Pippin broke Rule 4 by putting most of next day's allowance of wood on the fire. Well, now, what about a smoke, while you tell us what has been happening in the Shire, he said. There isn't no pipe weed now, said Hob. At least only for the chief's men. All the stocks seem to have gone. We do hear that wagon loads of it went away down the old road out of the South Farthing, over Sarnford way. That would be the end o' last year after you left. But it had been going away quietly before that, in a small way. That Lotho! Now you shut up! Hob Hayward! Cried several of the others. You know, Taco, that sort isn't allowed. The chief will hear of it, and we'll all be in trouble. He wouldn't hear not, if some of you here weren't sneaks, rejoined Hob hotly. All right, said Sam. That's quite enough. I don't want to hear no more. No welcome, no beer, no smoke, and a lot of rules and orc talk instead. I hope to have a rest, but I can see there's work and trouble ahead. Let's sleep and forget it till morning. The new chief evidently had means of getting news. It was a good 40 miles from the bridge to Bag End, but someone made the journey in a hurry. So Frodo and his friends soon discovered. They had not made any definite plans, but had vaguely thought of going down to Crick Hollow together first and resting there a bit. But now, seeing what things were like, they decided to go straight to Hobbiton. So the next day they set out along the road and jogged along steadily. The wind had dropped, but the sky was gray. The land looked rather sad and forlorn, but it was after all the 1st of November and the fag end of autumn. Still there seemed an unusual amount of burning going on, and smoke rose from many points round about. A great cloud of it was going up far away in the direction of the woody end. As evening fell, they were drawing near to Frogmorton, a village right on the road, about 22 miles from the bridge. There they meant to stay the night. The floating log at Frogmorton was a good inn. But as they came to the east end of the village, they met a barrier with a large board saying "No Road," and behind it stood a large band of sheriffs with staves in their hands and feathers in their caps, looking both important and rather scared. "What's all this?" said Frodo, feeling inclined to laugh. "This is what it is, Mr. Baggins," said the leader of the sheriffs, a two-feather hobbit. "You're arrested for gate-breaking and tearing up of rules, and assaulting gatekeepers, and trespassing, and sleeping in shire buildings without leave, and bribing guards with food." "And what else?" said Frodo. "That'll do to go on with," said the sheriff leader. "I can add some more, if you'd like it," said Sam, calling her chief names, wishing to punch his pimply face, and thinking you sheriffs look a lot of tomfools. "They're now Mister that'll do. It's the chief's orders that you're to come along quiet. We're going to take you to Bywater and hand you over to the chief's men. And when he deals with your case, you can have your say. But if you don't want to stay in the lockholes any longer than you need, I should cut the say short if I was you." To the discomfiture of the sheriffs, Frodo and his companions all roared with laughter. "Don't be absurd," said Frodo. "I am going where I please and in my own time. I happen to be going to Bag in on business, but if you insist on going too, well, that is your affair." "Very well, Mr. Baggins," said the leader, pushing the barrier aside. "But don't forget I've arrested you." "I won't," said Frodo. "Never. But I may forgive you. Now I am not going any further today, so if you'll kindly escort me to the floating log, I'll be obliged." "I can't do that, Mr. Baggins. The inn's closed. There's a sheriff house at the far end of the village. I'll take you there." "All right," said Frodo. "Go on, and we'll follow." Sam had been looking the sheriffs up and down, and had spotted one that he knew. "Hey, come here, Robin Smallburrow," he called. "I want a word with you." With a sheepish glance at his leader, who looked wrathful but did not dare to interfere, Sheriff Smallburrow fell back and walked beside Sam, who got down off his pony. "Look here, Cock Robin," said Sam. "You're Hobbiton bred and ought to have more sense. coming a-waylaying Mr. Frodo and all. And what's all this about the inn being closed? They're all closed, said Robin. The chief doesn't hold with beer. Leastways, that is how it started. But now I reckon it's his men that has it all. And he doesn't hold with folk moving about. So if they will, or they must, then they has to go to the sheriff house and explain their business. You ought to be ashamed of yourself having anything to do with such nonsense, said Sam. You used to like the inside of an inn better than the outside yourself. You were always popping in, on duty or off. And so I would be still, Sam, if I could. But don't be hard on me. What can I do? You know how I went for a sheriff 7 years ago, before any of this began. Gave me a chance of walking around the country and seeing folk and hearing the news and knowing where the good beer was. But now it's different. But you can give it up, stop sheriffing, if it has stopped being a respectable job, said Sam. We're not allowed to, said Robin. If I hear not allowed much oftener, said Sam, I'm going to get angry. Can't say as I'd be sorry to see it, said Robin, lowering his voice. If we all got angry together, something might be done. But it's these men, Sam, the chief's men. He sends 'em round everywhere. And if any of us small folk stand up for our rights, they drag him off to the lockholes. They took old Flour Dumpling, old Will Whitfoot the mayor, first, and they've taken a lot more. Lately it's been getting worse. Often they beat him now. Then why do you do their work for them? Said Sam angrily. Who sent you to Frogmorton? No one did. We stay here in the big sheriff house. With a 1st East Farthing troop now. There's hundreds of sheriffs all told, and they want more with all these new rules. Most of them are in it against their will, but not all. Even in the Shire, there are some as like minding other folks' business and talking big. And there's worse than that. There's a few as do spy work for the chief and his men. So that's how you had news of us, is it? That's right. We aren't allowed to send by it now, but they use the old quick post service and keep special runners at different points. One came in from Whitfurrows last night with a secret message, and another took it on from here. And a message came back this afternoon saying you was to be arrested and taken to Bywater, not direct to the lockholes. The chief wants to see you at once, evidently. He won't be so eager when Mr. Frodo has finished with him, said Sam. The sheriff house at Frogmorton was as bad as the bridge house. It had only one story, but it had the same narrow windows, and it was built of ugly pale bricks, badly laid. Inside it was damp and cheerless, and supper was served on a long bare table that had not been scrubbed for weeks. The food deserved no better setting. The travelers were glad to leave the place. It was about 18 miles to Bywater, and they set off at 10 o'clock in the morning. They would have started earlier, only the delay so plainly annoyed the sheriff leader. The west wind had shifted northward, and it was turning colder, but the rain was gone. It was rather a comic cavalcade that left the village, though the few folk that came out to stare at the get-up of the travelers did not seem quite sure whether laughing was allowed. A dozen sheriffs had been told off as escort to the prisoners, but Merry made them march in front, while Frodo and his friends rode behind. Merry, Pippin, and Sam sat at their ease laughing and talking and singing, while the sheriffs stumped along trying to look stern and important. Frodo, however, was silent and looked rather sad and thoughtful. The last person they passed was a sturdy old gaffer, clipping a hedge. "Hello, hello," he jeered. "Now who's arrested who?" Two of the sheriffs immediately left the party and went towards him. "Leader," said Merry, "order your fellows back to their places at once. if you don't want me to deal with them." The two hobbits, at a sharp word from the leader, came back sulkily. "Now get on," said Merry. And after that the travelers saw to it that their ponies' pace was quick enough to push the sheriffs along as fast as they could go. The sun came out, and in spite of the chilly wind, they were soon puffing and sweating. At the 3 farthing stone, they gave it up. They had done nearly 14 miles with only one rest at noon. It was now 3 o'clock. They were hungry and very footsore, and they could not stand the pace. "Well, come along in your own time," said Merry. "We're going on." "Goodbye, Cock Robin," said Sam. "I'll wait for you outside the Green Dragon, if you haven't forgotten where that is. Don't dawdle on the way. You're breaking a rest. That's what you're doing," said the leader ruefully, "and I can't be answerable." "We shall break a good many things yet, and not ask you to answer," said Pippin. "Good luck to you." The travelers trotted on, and as the sun began to sink towards the white downs far away on the western horizon, they came to Bywater by its wide pool, and there they had their first really painful shock. This was Frodo and Sam's own country, and they found out now that they cared about it more than any other place in the world. Many of the houses that they had known were missing. Some seemed to have been burned down. The pleasant row of old hobbit holes in the bank on the north side of the pool were deserted, and their little gardens that used to run down bright to the water's edge were rank with weeds. Worse, there was a whole line of the ugly new houses all along poolside, where the Hobbiton Road ran close to the bank. An avenue of trees had stood there. They were all gone. And looking with dismay up the road towards Bag, and they saw a tall chimney of brick in the distance. It was pouring out black smoke into the evening air. Sam was beside himself. "I'm going right on, Mr. Frodo," he cried. "I'm going to see what's up. I want to find my gaffer." "We ought to find out first what we're in for, Sam," said Merry. "I guess that the chief will have a gang of ruffians handy. We had better find someone who will tell us how things are round here." But in the village of Bywater, all the houses and holes were shut, and no one greeted them. They wondered at this, but they soon discovered the reason of it. When they reached the Green Dragon, the last house on the Hobbiton side, now lifeless and with broken windows, they were disturbed to see half a dozen large, ill-favored men lounging against the inn wall. They were squint-eyed and sallow-faced. "Like that friend of Bill Ferny's at Bree," said Sam. "Like many that I saw at Isengard," muttered Merry. The ruffians had clubs in their hands and horns by their belts, but they had no other weapons as far as could be seen. As the travelers rode up, they left the wall and walked into the road, blocking the way. "Where'd you think you're going?" said one, the largest and most evil-looking of the crew. "There's no road for you any further. And where are those precious sheriffs?" "Coming along nicely," said Merry. "A little footsore, perhaps. We promised to wait for them here." "Garn, what did I say?" said the ruffian to his mates. "I told Sharky it was no good trusting those little fools. Some of our chaps ought to have been sent." "And what difference would that have made, pray?" said Merry. "We're not used to footpads in this country, but we know how to deal with them." "Footpads, said the man. "So that's your tone, is it? Change it, or we'll change it for you. You little folk are getting too uppish. Don't you trust too much in the boss's kind heart. Sharky's come now, and he'll do what Sharky says." "And what may that be?" said Frodo quietly. "This country wants waking up and setting to rights," said the ruffian, "and Sharky's going to do it, and make it hard if you drive him to it. You need a bigger boss, and you'll get one before the year is out, if there's any more trouble. Then you'll learn a thing or two, you little rat folk." "Indeed, "I am glad to hear of your plans," said Frodo. "I am on my way to call on Mr. Lotho, and he may be interested to hear of them too." The ruffian laughed. "Lotho, he knows all right. Don't you worry. He'll do what Sharky says. Because if a boss gives trouble, we can change him. See? And if little folks try to push in where they're not wanted, we can put them out of mischief. See?" "Yes, I see," said Frodo. "For one thing, I see that you're behind the times and the news here. Much has happened since you left the South. Your day is over, and all other ruffians. The Dark Tower has fallen, and there is a king in Gondor. And Isengard has been destroyed, and your precious master is a beggar in the wilderness. I passed him on the road. The king's messengers will ride up the greenway now, not bullies from Isengard." The man stared at him and smiled. "A beggar in the wilderness," he mocked. "Oh, is he indeed? Swagger it, my little cock-a-whoop. But that won't stop us living in this fat little country where you have lazed long enough." And he snapped his fingers in Frodo's face. "King's messengers. That for them. When I see one, I'll take notice, perhaps." This was too much for Pippin. His thoughts went back to the field of Cormorant, and here was a squint-eyed rascal calling the ring-bearer little cock-a-whoop. He cast back his cloak, flashed out his sword, and the silver and sable of Gondor gleamed on him as he rode forward. "I am a messenger of the king," he said. "You are speaking to the king's friend, and one of the most renowned in all the lands of the West. You are a ruffian and a fool. Down on your knees in the road and ask pardon, or I will set this troll's bane in you." The sword glinted in the westering sun. Merry and Sam drew their swords also and rode up to support Pippin, but Frodo did not move. The ruffians gave back, scaring Breland peasants and bullying bewildered hobbits had been their work. Fearless hobbits with bright swords and grim faces were a great surprise, and there was a note in the voices of these newcomers that they had not heard before. It chilled them with fear. "Go," said Merry. "If you trouble this village again, you will regret it." The three hobbits came on, and then the ruffians turned and fled, running away up the Hobbiton road, but they blew their horns as they ran. "Well, we've come back none too soon," said Merry. "Not a day too soon. Perhaps too late, at any rate to save Lotho," said Frodo. "Miserable fool, but I am sorry for him." "Save Lotho? Whatever do you mean?" said Pippin. "Destroy him, I should say." "I don't think you quite understand things, Pippin," said Frodo. "Lotho never meant things to come to this pass. He has been a wicked fool, but he's caught now. The ruffians are on top, gathering, robbing, and bullying, and running or ruining things as they like, in his name. And not in his name, even for much longer. He's a prisoner in Bag End now, I expect, and very frightened. We ought to try and rescue him." "Well, I'm staggered," said Pippin. "Of all the ends to our journey, that is the very last I should have thought of, to have to fight half-orcs and ruffians in the Shire itself, to rescue Lotho Pimple." "Fight," said Frodo. "Well, I suppose it may come to that. But remember, there is to be no slaying of hobbits, not even if they have gone over to the other side. Really gone over, I mean, not just obeying ruffians' orders because they are frightened. No hobbit has ever killed another on purpose in the Shire, and it is not to begin now. And nobody is to be killed at all, if it can be helped. Keep your tempers and hold your hands to the last possible moment. But if there are many of these ruffians," said Merry, "it will certainly mean fighting. You won't rescue Lotho or the Shire just by being shocked and sad, my dear Frodo." "No," said Pippin. It won't be so easy scaring them a second time. They were taken by surprise. You heard that horn blowing? Evidently, there are other ruffians near at hand. They'll be much bolder when there's more of them together. We ought to think of taking cover somewhere for the night. After all, we're only 4, even if we are armed. I've an idea, said Sam. Let's go to old Tom Cotton's down South Lane. He always was a stout fellow, and he has a lot of lads that were all friends of mine. No, said Mary. It's no good getting under cover. That is just what people have been doing, and just what these ruffians like. They will simply come down on us in force, corner us, and then drive us out or burn us in. No, we have got to do something at once. Do what? Said Pippin. Raise the Shire, said Mary. Now, wake all our people. They hate all this, you can see. All of them except perhaps 1 or 2 rascals and a few fools that want to be important, but don't at all understand what is really going on. But Shire folk have been so comfortable so long, they don't know what to do. They just want a match, though. As it grew in grace and beauty, it was known far and wide, and people would come long journeys to see it. The only Mawlorn west of the mountains and east of the sea, and one of the finest in the world. Altogether 1420 in the Shire was a marvelous year. Not only was there wonderful sunshine and delicious rain, in due times and perfect measure, but there seemed something more, an air of richness and growth, and a gleam of a beauty beyond that of mortal summers that flicker and pass upon this middle earth. All the children born or begotten in that year, and there were many, were fair to see and strong, and most of them had a rich golden hair that had before been rare among hobbits. The fruit was so plentiful that young hobbits very nearly bathed in strawberries and cream, and later they sat on the lawns under the plum trees and ate, until they had made piles of stones like small pyramids or the heaped skulls of Conqueror, and then they moved on. And no one was ill, and everyone was pleased, except those who had to mow the grass. In the South Farthing the vines were laden, and the yield of leaf was astonishing, and everywhere there was so much corn that at harvest every barn was stuffed. The North Farthing barley was so fine that the beer of 1420 malt was long remembered and became a byword. Indeed, a generation later one might hear an old gaffer in an inn, after a good pint of well-earned ale, put down his mug with a sigh. That was proper 1420, that was. Sam stayed at first at the Cottons with Frodo, but when the new row was ready he went with the gaffer. In addition to all his other labors, he was busy directing the cleaning up and restoring of Bag End, but he was often away in the Shire on his forestry work. So he was not at home in early March and did not know that Frodo had been ill. On the 13th of that month Farmer Cotton found Frodo lying on his bed. He was clutching a white gem that hung on a chain about his neck, and he seemed half in a dream. "It is gone forever," he said, "and now all is dark and empty." But the fit passed, and when Sam got back on the 25th, Frodo had recovered, and he said nothing about himself. In the meanwhile, Bag End had been set in order, and Merry and Pippin came over from Crickhollow bringing back all the old furniture and gear, so that the old hole soon looked very much as it always had done. When all was at last ready, Frodo said, "When are you going to move in and join me, Sam?" Sam looked a bit awkward. "There is no need to come yet, if you don't want to," said Frodo. "But you know the gaffer is close at hand, and he will be very well looked after by Widow Rumble." "It's not that, Mr. Frodo," said Sam, and he went very red. "Well, what is it?" "It's Rosie, Rose Cotton," said Sam. "It seems she didn't like my going abroad at all, poor lass. But as I hadn't spoken, she couldn't say so. And I didn't speak because I had a job to do first. But now I have spoken, and she says, well, you've wasted a year, so why wait longer? Wasted, I says. I wouldn't call it that. Still, I see what she means. I feel torn in two, as you might say. I see, said Frodo. You want to get married, and yet you want to live with me in Bag End too? But my dear Sam, how easy. Get married as soon as you can, and then move in with Rosie. There's room enough in Bag End for as big a family as you could wish for. And so it was settled. Sam Gamgee married Rose Cotton in the spring of 1420, which was also famous for its weddings, and they came and lived at Bag End. And if Sam thought himself lucky, Frodo knew that he was more lucky himself, for there was not a hobbit in the Shire that was looked after with such care. When the labors of repair had all been planned and set going, he took to a quiet life, writing a great deal and going through all his notes. He resigned the office of deputy mayor at the Free Fair that midsummer, and dear old Will Whitfoot had another 7 years of presiding at banquets. Merry and Pippin lived together for some time at Crickhollow, and there was much coming and going between Buckland and Bag End. The two young travelers cut a great dash in the Shire with their songs, and their tales, and their finery, and their wonderful parties. Lordly folk called them, meaning nothing but good, for it warmed all hearts to see them go riding by with their mail shirts so bright and their shields so splendid, laughing and singing songs of far away. And if they were now large and magnificent, they were unchanged otherwise, unless they were indeed more fair-spoken and more jovial, and full of merriment than ever before. Frodo and Sam, however, went back to ordinary attire, except that when there was need they both wore long gray cloaks, finely woven and clasped at the throat with beautiful brooches, and Mr. Frodo wore always a white jewel on a chain that he often would finger. All things now went well, with hope always of becoming still better, and Sam was as busy and as full of delight as even a hobbit could wish. Nothing for him marred that whole year, except for some vague anxiety about his master. Frodo dropped quietly out of all the doings of the Shire, and Sam was pained to notice how little honor he had in his own country. Few people knew or wanted to know about his deeds and adventures. Their admiration and respect were given mostly to Mr. Meriadoc and Mr. Peregrine, and, if Sam had known it, to himself. Also in the autumn there appeared a shadow of old troubles. One evening Sam came into the study and found his master looking very strange. He was very pale, and his eyes seemed to see things far away. "What's the matter, Mr. Frodo?" said Sam. "I am wounded," he answered. "Wounded? It will never really heal." But then he got up, and the turn seemed to pass, and he was quite himself the next day. It was not until afterwards that Sam recalled that the date was October the 6th. 2 years before on that day, it was dark in the dell under Weathertop. Time went on, and 1421 came in. Frodo was ill again in March, but with a great effort he concealed it, for Sam had other things to think about. The first of Sam and Rosie's children was born on the 25th of March, a date that Sam noted. "Well, Mr. Frodo," he said, "I'm in a bit of a fix. Rose and me had settled to call him Frodo, with your leave, but it's not him, it's her. Though as pretty a maid child as anyone could hope for, taking after Rose more than me, luckily, so we don't know what to do." "Well, Sam," said Frodo, "what's wrong with the old customs? Choose a flower name like Rose." Half the maid children in the Shire are called by such names, and what could be better? I suppose you're right, Mr. Frodo, said Sam. I've heard some beautiful names on my travels, but I suppose they're a bit too grand for daily wear and tear, as you might say. The gaffer, he says, make it short, and then you won't have to cut it short before you can use it. But if it's to be a flower name, then I don't trouble about the length. It must be a beautiful flower because, you see, I think she is very beautiful and is going to be beautifuler still. Frodo thought for a moment. Well, Sam, what about Eleanor, the sun star? You remember the little golden flower in the grass of Lothlorien? You're right again, Mr. Frodo, said Sam, delighted. That's what I wanted. Little Eleanor was nearly 6 months old, and 1421 had passed through its autumn, when Frodo called Sam into the study. It will be Bilbo's birthday on Thursday, Sam, he said, and he'll pass the old took. He will be 131. So he will, said Sam. He's a marvel. Well, Sam, said Frodo, I want you to see Rose and find out if she can spare you, so that you and I can go off together. You can't go far or for a long time now, of course, he said a little wistfully. Well, not very well, Mr. Frodo. Of course not. But never mind. You can see me on my way. Tell Rose that you won't be away very long, not more than a fortnight, and you'll come back quite safe. I wish I could go all the way with you to Rivendell, Mr. Frodo, and see Mr. Bilbo, said Sam. And yet the only place I really want to be in is here. I am that torn in two. Poor Sam. It will feel like that. I am afraid, said Frodo. But you'll be healed. You are meant to be solid and whole, and you will be. In the next day or two, Frodo went through his papers and his writings with Sam, and he handed over his keys. There was a big book with plain red leather covers. Its tall pages were now almost filled. At the beginning there were many leaves covered with Bilbo's thin, wandering hand, but most of it was written in Frodo's firm, flowing script. It was divided into chapters, but chapter 80 was unfinished, and after that were some blank leaves. The title page had many titles on it, crossed out one after another, so my diary, my unexpected journey, there and back again, and what happened after, Adventures of 5 Hobbits, The Tale of the Great Ring, compiled by Bilbo Baggins from his own observations and the accounts of his friends. What we did in the War of the Ring. Here Bilbo's hand ended and Frodo had written, The Downfall of the Lord of the Rings and the Return of the King, as seen by the little people, being the memoirs of Bilbo and Frodo of the Shire, supplemented by the account of their friends and the learning of the wise, together with extract from books of lore translated by Bilbo in Rivendell. Why, you have nearly finished it, Mr. Frodo, Sammy exclaimed. Well, you have kept at it, I must say. I have quite finished, Sam, said Frodo. The last pages are for you. On September the 21st, they set out together, Frodo on the pony that had borne him all the way from Minas Tirith, and was now called Strider, and Sam on his beloved Bill. It was a fair golden morning, and Sam did not ask where they were going. He thought he could guess. They took the stock road over the hills and went towards the woody end, and they let their ponies walk at their leisure. They camped in the green hills, and on September the 22nd, they rode gently down into the beginning of the trees as afternoon was wearing away. If that isn't the very tree you hid behind when the Black Rider first showed up, Mr. Frodo, said Sam, pointing to the left. It seems like a dream now. It was evening, and the stars were glimmering in the eastern sky as they passed the ruined oak and turned and went on down the hill between the hazel thickets. Sam was silent, deep in his memories. Presently he became aware that Frodo was singing softly to himself, singing the old walking song, but the words were not quite the same. Still round the corner there may wait a new road or a secret gate, and though I oft have passed them by, a day will come at last when I shall take the hidden paths that run west of the moon, east of the sun. And as if in answer, from down below, coming up the road out of the valley, voices sang, "Hey, Elbereth Gilthaniel, Silverin Penamiriel, Umenewa glad ilinat, Gilthaniel, eh? Elbereth." We still remember, we who dwell in this far land beneath the trees, the starlight on the western seas. Frodo and Sam halted and sat silent in the soft shadows until they saw a shimmer as the travelers came towards them. There was Gilder and many fair elven folk, and there to Sam's wonder rode Elrond and Galadriel. Elrond wore a mantle of gray and had a star upon his forehead, and a silver harp was in his hand, and upon his finger was a ring of gold with a great blue stone. Villia, mightiest of the three. But Galadriel sat upon a white palfrey and was robed all in glimmering white, like clouds about the moon, for she herself seemed to shine with a soft light. On her finger was Nenya, the ring wrought of mithril, that bore a single white stone flickering like a frosty star. Riding slowly behind on a small gray pony, and seeming to nod in his sleep, was Bilbo himself. Elrond greeted them gravely and graciously, and Galadriel smiled upon them. "Well, Master Samwise," she said, "I hear and see that you have used my gift well. The Shire shall now be more than ever blessed and beloved." Sam bowed, but found nothing to say. He had forgotten how beautiful the lady was. Then Bilbo woke up and opened his eyes. "Hello, Frodo," he said. "Well, I have passed the Old Took today, so that's settled, and now I think I'm quite ready to go on another journey. Are you coming?" "Yes, I am coming," said Frodo. "The ring-bearers should go together." "Where are you going, master?" cried Sam, though at last he understood what was happening. "To the Havens, Sam," said Frodo, "and I can't come. No, Sam, not yet anyway, not further than the Havens. Though you too were a ring-bearer, if only for a little while. Your time may come. Do not be too sad, Sam. You cannot be always torn in two. You will have to be one and whole for many years. You have so much to enjoy and to be and to do." "But," said Sam, and tears started in his eyes, "I thought you were going to enjoy the Shire, too, for years and years, after all you have done." "So I thought too once, but I have been too deeply hurt, Sam. I tried to save the Shire, and it has been saved, but not for me. It must often be so, Sam, when things are in danger. Someone has to give them up, lose them, so that others may keep them. But you are my heir, all that I had and might have had I leave to you. And also you have Rose and Eleanor, and Frodo lad will come, and Rosie lass, and Mary, and Goldilocks, and Pippin, and perhaps more that I cannot see. Your hands and your wits will be needed everywhere. You will be the mayor, of course, as long as you want to be, and the most famous gardener in history. And you will read things out of the Red Book and keep alive the memory of the age that is gone, so that people will remember the great danger and so love their beloved land all the more. And that will keep you as busy and as happy as anyone can be, as long as your part of the story goes on. Come now, ride with me." Then Elrond and Galadriel rode on. For the third age was over, and the days of the rings were past, and an end was come of the story and song of those times. With them went many elves of the high kindred who would no longer stay in Middle-earth. And among them, filled with a sadness that was yet blessed and without bitterness, rode Sam, and Frodo, and Bilbo, and the elves delighted to honor them. Though they rode through the midst of the Shire all the evening and all the night, none saw them pass, save the wild creatures. Or here and there some wanderer in the dark who saw a swift shimmer under the trees, or a light and shadow flowing through the grass as the moon went westward. And when they had passed from the Shire, going about the south skirts of the White Downs, they came to the far downs and to the towers and looked on the distant sea. And so they rode down at last to Mithland, to the grey havens in the long firth of Lune. As they came to the gates, Círdan the shipwright came forth to greet them. Very tall he was, and his beard was long, and he was grey and old, save that his eyes were keen as stars. And he looked at them and bowed, and said, "All is now ready." Then Círdan led them to the havens, and there was a white ship lying, and upon the quay beside a great grey horse stood a figure robed all in white awaiting them. As he turned and came towards them, Frodo saw that Gandalf now wore openly on his hand the third ring, Narya the Great, and the stone upon it was red as fire. Then those who were to go were glad, for they knew that Gandalf also would take ship with them. But Sam was now sorrowful at heart, and it seemed to him that if the parting would be bitter, more grievous still would be the long road home alone. But even as they stood there, and the elves were going aboard, and all was being made ready to depart, up rode Merry and Pippin in great haste. And amid his tears Pippin laughed. "You tried to give us the slip once before and failed, Frodo," he said. "This time you have nearly succeeded, but you have failed again. It was not Sam, though, that gave you away this time, but Gandalf himself." "Yes," said Gandalf, "for it will be better to ride back 3 together than 1 alone. Well, here at last, dear friends, on the shores of the sea comes the end of our fellowship in Middle-earth. Go in peace. I will not say, do not weep, for not all tears are an evil." Then Frodo kissed Merry and Pippin, and last of all Sam, and went aboard, and the sails were drawn up, and the wind blew, and slowly the ship slipped away down the long grey firth, and the light of the glass of Galadriel that Frodo bore glimmered and was lost. And the ship went out into the high sea and passed on into the west, until at last on a night of rain Frodo smelled a sweet fragrance on the air and heard the sound of singing that came over the water. And then it seemed to him that as in his dream in the house of Bombadil, the grey rain curtain turned all to silver glass and was rolled back, and he beheld white shores, and beyond them a far green country under a swift sunrise. But to Sam the evening deepened to darkness as he stood at the haven, and as he looked at the grey sea he saw only a shadow on the waters that was soon lost in the west. There still he stood far into the night, hearing only the sigh and murmur of the waves on the shores of Middle-earth, and the sound of them sank deep into his heart. Beside him stood Merry and Pippin, and they were silent. At last the 3 companions turned away, and never again looking back they rode slowly homewards. And they spoke no word to one another until they came back to the Shire, but each had great comfort in his friends on the long grey road. At last they rode over the downs and took the east road, And then Merry and Pippin rode on to Buckland, and already they were singing again as they went. But Sam turned to buy water, and so came back up the hill, as day was ending once more. And he went on, and there was yellow light and fire within, and the evening meal was ready, and he was expected, and Rose drew him in, and set him in his chair, and put little Eleanor upon his lap. He drew a deep breath. "Well, I'm back," he said.